Trust. Good morning. What is it? Well, it's the key to unlocking the benefits of connected and autonomous vehicles. And I do want to end up saying a bit about that, but I'm going to set some context, I hope, in terms of the value chain. I know that we've talked about the electronics and the technological chain of events, but this is about social and economic change, and therefore the commercial elements need to come through as well. That is what we are used to looking at, or have done in the past. We all know that we're easing into a period of change, but it's more than the usual change. It's actually a revolution. And transport, or in fact mobility, is at the heart of it, underpinned by communications. We in this room are the enablers in this world, so we have to understand how it's changing. So we all recognise that the value chain, which used to look like this, is rapidly turning into something more like this. And for organisations like AESIN and its community of members, I believe that this is moving you even more to the front and centre than you have been in the past. Because how we gather information, if we harvest, if you like, and then process it so that it becomes operationally and commercially valuable, well, that is to a great extent in our hands. Oh, there's a little teaser. But to exploit the opportunities inherent in the new, more complex world, we have to move forward simultaneously on a number of fronts. And this was really clear from Tony's speech as well. Whether it's technology, whether it's commercial, whether it's political, economic, all these fronts need to be moving forward simultaneously if we're going to actually develop our own and be self-sufficient in the UK. And obviously with things happening next March, that's particularly pertinent. So embracing the complexity is a must, because taking a simple one-dimensional or sequential approach will be guaranteed to fail. But to move forward on many fronts requires collaboration between complementary groups, no one having supremacy over any others. The formal vertical, or the formerly vertical chain of the supply chain is being flattened by collaboration. And where is collaboration done well? Well, the UK. And the more of these little hubs, these intelligence centres, these congregating activities such as what AESIN are doing, and the Centre for Connected Autonomous Vehicles, APC, Meridian, all these bodies, you'll see a kind of a proliferation of them for the very simple reason that they're focusing our capability and making sure that we are greater than the sum of our parts. But collaboration does require effort. This is written very late last night, that I wrote for the electronics geeks amongst us, and I used to do engineering many, many years ago. There's an activation threshold, PN diodes and all this kind of stuff, which needs an input of energy to unlock the benefits. So AESIN, Meridian and others are those little activation energies. It works for me. Good. So, back to this one. One of the mechanisms for harnessing collaboration in this rapidly evolving world of connected and autonomous vehicles is Meridian. With the mandate of the Auto Council, the Departments of BEIS and Transport through CCAV, that's the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles for the uninitiated, and an increasing number of other stakeholders in this place, Meridian is tasked with being the UK's CAV development hub. So it says the gateway to CAV development. Ideally, when we have really mastered this thing and it's right up to speed, people will know that if you need to know about CAV in the UK, you can go to Meridian. It does not mean that you can't go directly to any of the players in the UK's CAV ecosystem directly, especially if you have relationships with them, but we will signpost to you. It means a number of other things. It also means that Meridian is a brand that the UK's CAV testers and developers can use around the world. So my job is to ensure that that brand gains strength and credibility through activities in the UK and around the world. And as that brand gains value, its potential as a kind of an umbrella brand, which you can use to set the context for your own specialist activities, that grows, as does the ability to bask in the reflected glory of other members of the UK's CAV community. So we celebrated our first birthday 3 weeks ago now at Cenex, at LCV. There was a substantial increase in the amount of CAV activity there, built around the Meridian stand. Who wasn't at LCV? That is amazing. Well, I feel sorry for you. You missed out. It was an excellent event, but it also did reinforce the fact that Meridian is here. It is a brand that's now credible, and I'm getting feedback not just from that kind of event, but from internationally, that there is an awareness of what Meridian is doing. So I'm going to continue to bore you a bit by telling you what that is, because I want to make sure that the messages are out there and they're consistent so that we can be used effectively. So we were originally conceived following the original auto sector deal and then established firmly by the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles. And our role is to act as a kind of yang to CCAV's yin, where CCAV defines policy and regulation, or develops the regulations. Meridian implements these and brings the commercial perspective to the integrated whole that it forms with CCAV. So if there's been any confusion in the past, there are very clear difference in roles between CCAV and Meridian, as there are between Meridian and the Transport Systems Catapult, AESIN and others. If we don't create our own unique niche, then each of us is probably going to kind of distract and undermine our own missions. So very clearly we are complementary to CCAV. We're also complementary to the Department for International Trade automotive team. They regard us as their CAV arm. I'm going to succumb. We have been described as the paramilitary wing of CCAV, but I am not yet wearing a beret, so not quite that aggressive. That said, yeah, complementary whole. In very simple terms, Meridian is responsible for creating a comprehensive, integrated and highly accessible development environment in the UK for CAV-enabled systems and services. It's then responsible for marketing and creating commercial opportunities for the resulting ecosystem, so generating social and economic impact across the UK. We have quite big mission, quite big goals. But the components of the ecosystem look like this. You've got physical development top right. Bottom left, you've got that is complemented by simulations and virtual testing. It's all underpinned top left by a robust data and communications layer, and implemented according to emerging principles and standards, bottom right. But for me, the most interesting bit is that bit in the middle bottom, because it has to be implemented, it has to be embodied by a very diverse, skilled, and close-coupled community. That thing as a whole is what we're referring to as our CAV ecosystem. And you're all part of it, I'm afraid. Enjoy. Phase 1 of the Meridian programme was to set up 4 diverse and complementary urban testing environments, ranging from the fully controlled through a semi-controlled environment at the Atomic Energy Establishment in Culham, and onto the public domain in the West Midlands and in London, Europe's only megacity, and a major selling point for Testbed UK, or the Meridian cluster as it's gradually becoming. So these 4 physical testbeds are being set up by consortia, collaborative, building on the existing territory of the 4 leads, who are Warwick Manufacturing Group, Hariba Myra, Millbrook and TRL. So again, we can go around the world and say we are building this on 4 world-class testing centres who are all collaborating to create one massive test centre, which makes it unique around the world. And they're all within a 2-hour drive, so it's the most compact, comprehensive, coordinated testbed in the world. Next, we're in the process of evaluating bids to fill the gaps. This first bit is about bridging between the urban centres with physical testing environments covering highways, rural and parking. And this, at the same time, we are currently evaluating submissions to deliver a data exchange to assist in the sharing and enhancement of data. So that's facilitating the exchange of data to test, develop, demonstrate and exploit CAV opportunities. And it's doing it on a platform or a set of platforms which are adaptable to cope with the increasing volumes and new types of data in formats which are accessible and appropriate for users. There are clearly many other areas that we need to address, and we are doing so in the UK and in collaboration with partners around the world. And that does not mean that we are leaking some of our opportunities to competitors around the world. On the contrary, it means that we can focus our efforts here, maximise our share of the world pie, and if we can get 5% of the 900 or billion or a trillion pounds worth of business here that is forecast for the next 20 years, then we'll be pretty happy. So let's make sure the pie is as big as possible and make sure we are set up to actually eat it. So these are examples of things that have been considered through the development of a programme of so-called interventions, and those are activities which include those based on the collaborative R&D style competitions run by Innovate UK. And many of you will be familiar with those, but we're not just resorting to those. We're looking at other activities, other ways of making sure that we can complement and get the best out of UK PLC. And an example of that might be where we are putting some money into a voucher scheme so that SMEs or startups can actually use the facilities that have been created in the test bed, which benefits the test bed, benefits the startups, and therefore benefits the whole ecosystem. Where does the money go best? Key element that we do need to look at is trust. So it's taken a while, but I now bring it back to the beginning and make it relevant. It's of paramount importance, clearly. It's inextricably linked with resilience, security, safety, accountability, and of course risk. And what we all naturally want is reduced risk and increased predictability, whether it's based on emotion or logic. And again, Meridian's role is not just to kind of build a technology environment, it is to communicate it, share it, and broadcast it. And that communication element is linked to emotion, the human facts, and so on. So we have to think about both these pillars. Emotionally, trust is where you expose your vulnerabilities to someone, thing, or someone, but believe they will not take advantage of your openness or hope. Logically, it's also where you have assessed the probability of gain and loss and concluded that the thing in question will behave in a sufficiently predictable manner, it says here. Kind of bland definitions, but linked to an enormous amount of activity to unpick them. But it's the interplay between the emotional and the logical outcomes that comes to a head in the world of transport. We're all very emotional about it. We're all emotionally and logically invested. But that's especially the case where new technologies and services come into play. And in particular, cyber requirements are in conflict with each other. So we've got privacy, which says don't share any data. And safety, on the other hand, says it's better when more data is shared. And then there's the fundamental paradox, which says that where information can be shared for the greater good, which is what we're striving for, it can also be used maliciously. Life's hard. Made harder by the fact that we're all human beings, and we inject failure left, right, and centre through our own fallibility. We know that the majority of accidents are caused by human error. Errors including all these, inexperience, which applies to everyone dealing with the new technologies that were coming out. I don't know how many of you remember the crash with a Volvo earlier this year. Chap bought his car on the way home, crashed it in the back of a lorry because it didn't realise that he didn't have adaptive cruise control. Oops. But we are all getting into vehicles which have different levels of capability, and the scale from 1 to 5, the SAE scale of autonomy, is a bit confusing because in reality it's not a step. There's continuity, and we are all at risk there. There are distractions, there's drinking and driving, there's night driving, there's all these things. There's being male and young, bottom right, but actually there are more and more women involved in incidents as well. So it's a bad place. I realise that this is a but speech where you say, we're all going to hell in a handcart. It's disaster is looming. But there's an opportunity for handcart manufacturers. So there's the but count in this presentation is quite high. This is a positive one, but we can be optimistic despite all this stuff. When we look to a connected and autonomous future, we can begin to predict a revolution in safety where we replace these human fallibilities with something more predictable, more reliable and machine-based. However, which I was once told is but in a tuxedo, however, many safety predictions are made based on an assumption that the reliability of the experiences we have with consumer and business electronic systems will be acceptable in the safety-critical environment of our roads. And of course, this is an unsafe assumption for many reasons. One, because safety standards are higher in transport, but another one, which I think is equal, if not more important, because a few early errors in this area could stall the global revolution for years at the cost of many lives unsaved. Now, in this room, we know that creating hyper-safe solutions to the challenges just mentioned will be hard, but it is possible. And there is an enormous opportunity available to us by harnessing the UK's strength in electronics, computer science, and digital resilience, or cybersecurity, strengths which complement each other extremely well. TechWorks and AESIN are recognised by Meridian, the Automotive Council, government, and many others as working at the forefront in these areas. And the number of references to digital resilience in today's session says we are committed to the mission to solve the problems caused by human fallibility. But while human fallibility is one thing, malice is an altogether different one, and the benefits from connectivity can easily be rationalised, but the potential to abuse is also obvious. Someone from the UK Autodrive programme recently commented that CAV is the first industry that is safety critical working at IT scale, by which they meant that the number of machines, vehicles, systems that are out there is equivalent to the number of laptops or similar IT gadgets we have, but the safety criticality in the automotive industry or the vehicle or in transport is clearly different. Where a computer crash is irritating, a car crash is a whole lot more. But I'm still an engineer at heart, so I know that where a problem can be expressed clearly there are solutions to be had. And in this case, complex though it might be, it can nevertheless be described. So to be honest, if we can deal with the packets of data pinging around in the ether and miraculously coming out of the little box of electronics in the palm of our hands, and then we can step things up to achieve hyper-resilience in data transfer between vehicles and the transport infrastructure. It is possible, and I think it's possible in the timeframes we're looking at, because connected autonomous vehicles swamping our road systems is a long way off. The elements of trust. So this is going to what we've been working on in the next sector deal and with the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, money that could be at your disposal in the next couple of years. Recently, the road, rail and maritime industries got together collaboratively to bid for development funding for work under the heading of trust, which includes the cybersecurity and other safety issues facing cabs, as well as insurance and legal aspects, and ultimately the requirements to make cab-enabled systems and services both acceptable and accessible to users, the human element again. To feed into this bid, AESIN convened a workshop with the Automotive Council and at the request of Meridian to provide input to this Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund submission on digital resilience. And I want to thank Andrew Ashby of AESIN for making that happen. Is Andrew here? Yeah, thank you, Andrew. You collectively provide us with invaluable material really, and thinking also that will hopefully result in national funding and programs that accelerate the development of solutions. We hope to hear whether funding in 9 figures has been awarded in a month or so, and that's 9 figures to the left of the decimal point. I know I'm in a room of engineers and pedants, it's great. I feel at home. The workshop highlighted the size of the problem, or rather the unknown size of the problem, where millions of vehicles full of connected electronics are operating with systems that are far beyond the reach and understanding of the vehicle manufacturer. But the UK has to take action rather than be paralysed by fear of the unknown, or take a safer position of waiting for others to solve these problems and then pay handsomely to obtain them, with all the risks that includes. And that was one of the strongest arguments we presented at the assessment panel chaired by Sir Mark Walpert last week. We're standing on a burning platform of opportunity to connect and exploit our excellent academic and industrial capabilities here in this room to become world leaders in digital resilience for connected and autonomous vehicles. Meridian is fully behind this cause, and we're committed to working closely with you and with the wider TechWorks community. And to this end, last slide, you'll be pleased to know, and to this end, Meridian and TechWorks have drawn up a formal agreement to work together, mentioned by Alan this morning. The intention is to accelerate development and commercialisation of connected and autonomous vehicles in the UK. So the bigger picture, we're part of that. It's an integral part of the Meridian plans to create the tightest ecosystem in the world for cloud development and deployment. So not only do we have all the key components in one diverse and densely packed country, but they will all be working together for mutual benefit and also greater individual benefit. But we're building on similar MOUs, so this is part of a network of networks. There's an MOU we've signed with Michigan, with Canada. We're in the process of talking about signing MOUs with other countries who are particularly active in this space. But we're also looking at MOUs between Meridian and organisations that can make a difference collectively. So there's yourselves. BSI we signed a MOU with during LCV. And we've got 1 or 2 others lined up. The NPL is another one. The idea is that we work together to not just develop the technology, but to promote the outcomes. So initially areas we'll focus on include safety, digital resilience, communications and ADAS. but we'll expand to cover priorities as they emerge. An example of what this means in practice sits with the development of a PAS programme, a publicly available, that's the one, publicly available standard, which for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a phenomenally good tool that BSI have developed, which means you can develop standards, real standards that people can follow because they're credible, they've got the BSI stamp on, but they can be done quite rapidly, unlike UNECE standards. Now, the plan, therefore, is that we are going to create a program. We have a program of PASs that we're going to be developing and issuing over the coming 2 years. So anything from half dozen to 10 of these. We'll share the subject matter, the sequence and the subsequent outputs with you, and the series will be designed to support Ian Yarnold and his colleagues at DFT, so shaping the work that being done by the UNECE working groups that they chair on safety and standards. So we're taking the lead as the UK, influencing what's going to then go on around the world. So working under our MOU will therefore include creation of a functional safety PAS, and there's a workshop planned for Wednesday, sorry. Thursday, confirmed, led by Michael Pont. But he is leading it. Okay, so talk to someone from AESIN about that. We will be inputting to UK government and UNECE standards of practice and also the codes of practice that are helping, again, preemptively before the standards themselves are finished. We will be working specifically on a cybersecurity PAS, and that will be done with the National Cybersecurity Centre and various others as well. And so, in short, there is a load of work to be done. But AESIN under Alan, Paul, and others have been making major waves, and I've been observing them over the last few years. And I think you're now pivotal to the success of our self-driving and connected future. So I, on behalf of Meridian, look forward to working closely with you, increasingly over the coming years, months, and weeks. Thank you.